Hey, I've said a few times I don't believe in humanism anymore. For me, it falls under the, fortune cookies, supernatural worldviews, and it shouldn't be. There's nothing supernatural about it. But once you understand HsD and how advanced it is, the idea of believing in humanism, and that's sad, but it's ridiculous to believe in it because our potential is no longer accessible to us if our higher brain functions through HsD is no longer accessible to us. So I'll talk a little bit more about examples from humanist communities I've known. Hey, I'm watching this. I was never sure. I saw previews on some other DVD from the library. Wasn't sure if it was a movie or a TV show. The disc one has 3 episodes. I've watched 2 so far. This is very accurate of not just back then, what cultures of military, and not just the United States, but today, right? And of course, I have my own data from trying to be of service since I got stuck here because of COVID in Canada again when I was supposed to be working as a learning specialist related to my definition of it, not what you want to believe I can or can't do or should not do to facilitate the status quo of issues with systemic problems in like education, for example, like a learning specialist. In case you don't believe in what's right in front of your face, is I don't promote and encourage and participate in these systemic issues in education. It's quite the opposite if you take the time to read the definition. And again, it says guarantee on my file attachment name. That means you can observe me. And if you don't understand what it is, ask me. Right? Okay, so yeah, the first humanist group I belonged to was, I paid for memberships here and there, sometimes not, is the Humanist Association of Ottawa. And I also, I think, joined once or twice the Canadian one. And so I met, I've gone to conferences, Imagine No Religion 4. I would have liked to go to more of those. And listening to speakers and see how they would often, in that Imagine No Religion 4, pretty much all of them kind of danced around my question after their talk. And just knowing people in Ottawa a long time and seeing that they didn't at all evolve, self-actualize any more than when I first met them, and often regressed in their personal development. But I'm showing you this because this is another example of when I was in Courtenay and the guest was of that humanist group. And by the way, when humanists are majoritively older people and they don't try to recruit younger people, and when younger people are there and they have things to say, the older people have to know that you might be a humanist, but which is, better than average in ideology, but it's still, you got to walk the talk. Is you got to be open-minded about knowing that you're old and you're really programmed in your outdated things. That means there's a lot of behaviors you have that is the same of Catholics in your lifestyles, for example. And it's not specific to just asking a question, do you believe in God or not? It's like, what's your opinion on mortgages or homelessness or drug addiction or your own healthcare system, or, like you want to believe your healthcare system is about the same as what Catholics want to believe it is, but it's, there's no data to confirm that hope. You use humanism as false hope to ignore the data that it's screwed up, for example. But they had invited a guest speaker who was decorated, and I say that word, I think just won awards, or I don't know what the term is. I don't really want to know. And was now the leader of, or the leader, the person in charge of the museum in Comox was the guest speaker. And during his talk, I picked up a lot of incongruences, and which results in cognitive dissonance, about hoping for a better world for the kids, saying, "Oh, we're much better now at." This has got to be at least 12 years ago, I would say. We're much better now at, minimizing casualties. So there's less innocent people die when you're targeting somebody. I guess the elites of Israel and the USA don't know that, or they got worse at it in some way, and I don't know if they know it, but they obviously have. And by the way, the UN is really the United Elites Global Club is what it is. So when this guy was talking like this, and I knew I couldn't stay for the entire meeting because I needed to catch a bus for a place I promised I would be, is I did kind of say, can I interrupt because I have to go early, and here's my question, and here's what I noticed so far in the talk. And I was not well known in that Courtney humanist group, but I know how to express myself. And what I say is apropos because I'm also a good listener. There's a lot of people that talk a lot, but they don't listen, so they don't realize they suck at communication. Because it's very important to not just know how to articulate what's in your head, but you have to be able to read your audience where they're thinking, why is he or she mentioning this now, and what happened to what I was talking about, and how was it discarded, because that person was waiting for a gap to share their story without acknowledging mine, and sometimes not even knowing that's what I said, because they weren't a good enough listener to know you didn't have to add that part. You were preparing your head the whole time, Anyways, and Toastmasters, by the way, I respect that. I would recommend people to it, but it doesn't teach communication. It doesn't teach listening. Okay? It doesn't even teach how to properly assess public speaking, but it is a good public speaking program. Okay, and I haven't done it myself, but people don't know. They think I have. So, and that matters, whether you have a certificate or not, but you can demonstrate the skills, that matters. So when that guy from the Army, and I'd have to look up his name, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's just a typical Army person, except, higher rank and long career and decorations of some kind. And by the way, when you get decorations or awards in the Army, it's not because it's related to bringing peace or ending war. He helped end the war. End the war or win, because there's no winners in war. So that's how you have to train your brains to be different. If you're in a war and both sides are like really going to do worse and worse things because they think winning is what war is about, when there's no winning in the concept of war, then yeah, I'm still looking for the elusive Homo sapiens. So one of the things I said is, because he was mentioning his grandkids, and he was saying I'd be less worried about my grandkids' life because of how we are progressing in not the art, but wet technology and precision, and then I challenged him. I said, well, wouldn't you be even less worried about your kids if, for example, your talk or your abilities to think led you to question the very concept of the existence of war for a species that claims to be so advanced, as you were claiming, for example, in your talk? And, and he kind of went a little bit there for a second, but then his programming jumped back to his own HSD, and then his response was not very much related to addressing that issue. But the point here is humanism is nobody in that group said, good question, or talked to me or followed up with me, because they were just so impressed that somebody with such status was a guest, and of course I wouldn't be invited to be their guest because, I walk the talk of humanism more than humanists do. And so it's sad, it's sad that, established groups, you kind of say, well, does that really fit your paradigm? Or wouldn't that kind of behavior be walking the talk more? Or do you really believe we've been progressing as a species with the sign of even the things you're talking about as being in the news? And, they can't go there. So in that way, they are very, very similar to religious people. Now, that means, again, that this disease of HSD affects everybody, whether you're from the nonsense of this religion God or the nonsense of this religion God, or you claim to be non-religious, but you're very involved in the magical monetary paradigm, which again is, it should not be part of the lives of humanists, and yet it is. You know, many of them are well established. They have more than the norm or others. They don't live as minimalists, so it's hard to kind of really respect them for claiming to be who they are, because it's easy for me to say, well, did you know this? Yeah. Oh, I'm very aware of this. Okay, well, do you think it's appropriate for you to act like this? Like, have you ever heard of, you know, think globally, act locally? You know, it's too much for humanists in very similar ways that it's too much for those that they claim are fundamentalist in their own religions.